Commander Alan Wright stood on the observation deck of Earth Defense Station Alpha, his weathered face reflecting in the reinforced glass as he stared into the vast emptiness of space. But space wasn't empty today. Hundreds of alien ships from the Galactic Coalition were moving, their engines glowing bright blue against the blackness. They were leaving. "They can't be serious," Alan whispered, pressing his palm against the cold glass. Lieutenant Kelly Barnes rushed to his side, her boots echoing on the metal floor. "Sir, we're receiving automated departure notices from all Coalition vessels. No explanations, just goodbye messages." Alan's jaw tightened. For 15 years, humanity had been the newest member of the Galactic Coalition. For 15 years, they had been looked down upon as primitives, as children playing with dangerous toys. Yet when border disputes broke out, it was human soldiers who volunteered first. Human ships that took the front lines. "Get me Ambassador Zixtal," Alan ordered, turning from the window. Now. The communication center buzzed with frantic activity. Officers in blue uniforms moved between stations, their faces painted with confusion and fear. On the main screen, displays showed Coalition ships activating their jump drives one by one, disappearing in flashes of light. "Sir, the Meridian Embassy ship is the only one responding," said Communications Officer Doug Peterson, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "Ambassador Zixtal is coming through." The screen flickered, revealing the tall, blue-skinned form of the Meridian ambassador. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of discomfort that Alan had learned to recognize during diplomatic meetings. "Commander." "Right," Zixtal said, his translator converting the musical Meridian language into flat English. "I had hoped to be gone before this conversation." "What's happening?" Alan demanded, stepping closer to the screen. "Why is the Coalition abandoning Earth without warning?" Zixtal's secondary breathing flaps fluttered. "The void swarm has broken. Through the outer defense line at Proxima Centauri, the Coalition Council voted 8 hours ago. Earth's solar system will serve as a buffer zone." "A buffer zone?" Alan's voice dropped dangerously low. "You mean a sacrifice?" "The void swarm cannot be defeated, Commander. They consume entire worlds. The Coalition must protect the core systems where billions more lives are at stake." Zixtal didn't sound apologetic. He sounded practical, as if discussing the weather rather than the abandonment of 8 billion humans. Alan's fist slammed down on the console. "We're part of the Coalition. We have a defense treaty, which the Council has voted to suspend under emergency powers. I am sorry, Commander. Your species showed promise." Zixtal reached toward his control panel. "If it helps, no species has ever stood against the swarm and survived. Running is the only logical choice." The screen went black. Silence fell over the communication center. Alan looked around at the faces of his crew. Shock, betrayal, fear. "Sir," Kelly said quietly, "what do we do now?" Alan straightened his shoulders. "We fight. Alert all Earth governments. I want a full Defense Council meeting in 1 hour." Dr. Olivia Martinez hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her eyes burned as she stared at her computer screen, scrolling through thousands of files the Coalition had accidentally left behind in their rush to evacuate their Earth embassy. "They knew," she whispered, pushing her curly black hair away from her face. "They've known about the void swarm for decades." The laboratory at NASA's Deep Space Research Center was nearly empty. Most scientists had gone home to be with their families after the news broke. The Coalition's betrayal and the approaching alien threat had sent waves of panic across the globe. Olivia took another sip of cold coffee and kept reading. The Coalition had encountered the void swarm 60 years ago. 17 civilizations had already fallen. The Coalition's strategy had always been retreat and sacrifice, offering up less valuable worlds to buy time. She froze, her finger hovering over the screen. There, buried in a technical report, was something the Coalition scientists had discovered, but never acted upon. The Void Swarm Central Units show sensitivity to radiation in the gamma spectrum between 0.87 and 0.92 PV, she read aloud. Exposure causes temporary disruption of hive communication patterns. Olivia grabbed her phone and dialed quickly. Admiral Grant, she said when a tired voice answered. I found something in the Coalition data. The swarm has a weakness. Bill Harmon walked the fence line of his Montana ranch as the sun set behind the Rocky Mountains. The radio in his pocket had been broadcasting news all day. Alien allies abandoning. Earth governments declaring states of emergency. Military assets being repositioned. At 62, Bill had seen a lot. He'd watched in wonder when the first Coalition ships arrived 15 years ago. He'd celebrated when humanity joined the galactic community. He'd even hosted 2 alien tourists who wanted to see an authentic Earth farm. Now he watched the darkening sky with new eyes scanning for threats. A flash of light caught his attention, too quick for a shooting star, too bright for an airplane. Then another, and another. Small objects were entering the atmosphere, leaving bright trails as they descended. Bill's hand tightened around his flashlight. He wasn't a military man, but he didn't need to be to understand what was happening. The invasion had begun. Admiral Susan Grant stood in the Pentagon's war room, surrounded by screens showing defense positions around the globe. At 58, she had never expected to be in charge of Earth's last stand. The President has authorized full deployment of all strategic assets, she told the assembled military leaders, some present in person, others joining via secure video. As of now, we are at war. Commander Alan Wright's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the space station. Admiral, we've spotted the first wave. Smaller ships, likely scouts. They're entering the atmosphere at multiple points. Any communication attempts? Susan asked. We've tried all frequencies and protocols the Coalition gave us. No response. Alan looked exhausted but determined. They're not here to talk. Susan nodded grimly. Then we make Earth too costly to take. I want all orbital platforms weaponized. Commander Wright, you're authorized to convert the civilian satellites, if necessary. Her phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Martinez. Found potential weakness. Need to meet ASAP. We have resources the Coalition doesn't know about, Susan told the room. And something they never expected from us. The will to stand and fight. On screens around the world, news programs showed the first images of the alien ships. Dark, asymmetrical shapes against the blue sky, like ink blots spreading across a clean page. In homes and bunkers and emergency centers, humans watched and waited. Unlike the 17 species before them, they weren't running. They had nowhere to go. Earth would stand and fight. Commander Alan Wright returned to the observation window after the emergency meeting. Earth looked peaceful from orbit. Blue oceans, swirling white clouds, green and brown land masses. Home, behind, him. The station hummed with activity as his crew converted scientific equipment into defensive systems. They had limited weapons, limited shields, limited everything, but they had something the Coalition had never understood about humans. Limitless determination. His communication officer called out, Sir, we're detecting more void swarm ships entering the solar system. Dozens. Hundreds of them. Alan watched as the first dark ships appeared in the distance, their shapes unlike anything the Coalition had designed. Organic, almost, like giant insects made of metal and shadow. Send word to Admiral Grant, he said calmly. First major contact in 30 minutes, and tell Dr. Martinez to hurry with that research. He straightened his uniform and turned to face his crew. Throughout human history, we've faced overwhelming odds, he said. This is no different. We fight not because victory is certain, but because the alternative is unthinkable. Outside the window, Earth continued its slow, peaceful rotation, unaware that it was about to become the first, and perhaps last battlefield in humanity's greatest war. 3 weeks had passed since the Coalition abandoned Earth. The planet now stood alone against the Void Swarm, an enemy that had devoured 17 civilizations before them. Military bases around the world had transformed into coordination centers, as humanity prepared for the fight of its existence. Dr. Olivia Martinez wiped sweat from her forehead as she worked in the underground Houston facility. The lab once used for energy research now held 20 scientists working around the clock. Pipes and wires covered the walls. Machines hummed day and night. The radiation has to be precisely calibrated, Olivia told engineer Paul Rodriguez. Too weak and it won't affect the swarm. Too strong and... Paul nodded, understanding the unspoken concern. They had discovered that the void swarm was vulnerable to specific radiation frequencies, but that radiation was also deadly to humans. Any weapon they created would endanger its users. I've reinforced the shielding on the prototype, Paul said, pointing to a bulky rifle-like device on the testing bench. It should give the soldier using it about 15 minutes before reaching dangerous exposure levels. Olivia frowned. 15 minutes isn't enough. It's all we've got for now. The lab door opened and Admiral Susan Grant walked in. Her uniform was wrinkled and dark circles had formed under her eyes. Like everyone else, she had barely slept since the invasion began. Please tell me you have good news, Doctor, Susan said. Olivia gestured to the prototype weapon. It works in testing. The radiation disrupts their communication patterns, but it comes with a cost. Everything in this war comes with a cost, Susan replied grimly. We've lost 23 cities worldwide. The swarm is establishing processing centers in each location. Paul looked up sharply. Processing centers? They're stripping resources and we think they're collecting genetic samples from captured humans. We don't fully understand their purpose yet. Olivia pushed away from her desk. We need more time. That's the one thing we don't have, Susan said. I'm authorizing production of 200 radiation weapons based on your prototype. We'll warn the soldiers about the risks. They'll die, Olivia whispered. Susan's face hardened. Many are dying already. At least this way, they take some of the enemy with them. Captain Dwayne Clark lay flat on his stomach at the edge of a rooftop in what used to be downtown Atlanta. His squadron of 12 Special Forces soldiers were spread across several buildings, all watching the alien structure that had grown in the center of the city. The Void Swarm ships had landed 3 days ago, unfolding like terrible flowers to reveal their true forms. They weren't ships at all, but massive creatures, part machine, part biological material. Now they were constructing a tower that pulsed with sickly purple light. Alpha team in position, Dwayne whispered into his radio. Visual on the target. Bravo team ready, came the response from Lieutenant Kathy Winters on a nearby building. Dwayne adjusted his scope, focusing on the aliens moving around the base of the tower. They were tall, insect-like creatures with multiple limbs and glossy, black exoskeletons. Some had tool-like appendages while others carried what looked like weapons. Remember the objective, Dwayne said. We need to capture one of their scout ships intact. Command wants to understand how they communicate. Roger that, Kathy responded. Distraction team is ready. Dwayne took a deep breath. Execute in 3, 2, 1. On the far side of the city, explosions lit up the night. The Void Swarm guards turned toward the distraction, several racing off to investigate. Now, Dwayne ordered, leaping to his feet. His team rushed forward, using grappling equipment to descend from the buildings. They moved with practiced precision toward the smaller scout ship parked near the tower. The first aliens noticed them when they were halfway there. Strange high-pitched sounds filled the air, their alarm system. Dwayne fired his rifle, the bullets punching through the aliens' armor at the joint areas. They're coming from the east side, Kathy shouted through the radio. At least 30, Dwayne reached the scout ship first, placing explosive charges on what they believed was the entry point. Fire in the hole! The small explosion blew open a hatch. Dwayne and 3 soldiers rushed inside while the rest of the team formed a perimeter. Inside, the ship, everything was organic and machine blended together. Controls pulsed with light and surfaces felt warm to the touch. Plant the disruptors, Dwayne ordered. The team placed small devices on what looked like important systems. These were designed by Dr. Martinez's team to temporarily disable rather than destroy. Outside gunfire intensified. Captain, we're losing ground. Kathy's voice crackled through the radio. Peters is down. Gonzalez too. Start the extraction, Dwayne replied. We've got what we came for. The scout ship's systems dimmed as the disruptors activated. Dwayne felt the vessel shudder beneath his feet. It's working. Back to the rendezvous point. They fought their way out, each step costing them. Of the 12 who started the mission, only 7 made it back to the hidden transport trucks, but they had done it. Captured an alien scout ship that could reveal the secrets of the Void Swarm's hive mind. As they drove away, Dwayne looked back at Atlanta's burning skyline. The city was lost, but maybe, just maybe, they had gained something that could save many others. Ambassador Carol White walked slowly through the abandoned Galactic Embassy, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. 3 weeks ago, this building had been filled with representatives from 26 alien species. Now only she remained, Earth's voice to a galaxy that had turned its back. A noise from the communication center caught her attention. Carol reached for the small pistol at her hip. She'd never needed a weapon as an ambassador before the invasion. "Show yourself," she called out. A thin figure stepped from the shadows. It wasn't human. The skin was pale yellow with faint green stripes, and the eyes were too large, set wide on a narrow face. "Ambassador White," the alien said, its translator converting the words to English. "I am Vex, trader from the Centauri systems." Carol kept her weapon raised. "All Coalition members left Earth. Why are you still here?" Vex's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "I am not well regarded by the Coalition, and I was curious. No species has ever stood against the Void Swarm before. I wanted to see what humans would do. We're fighting for our survival while your people ran," Carol said bitterly. "My people ran long before yours even reached the stars," Vex replied. "But I stayed, and I bring information that might help." Carol lowered her weapon slightly. "What information?" "The Void Swarm isn't just consuming resources. They're collecting genetic material from every world they invade. They evolve by incorporating the strengths of other species." Vex stepped closer. "But they've never encountered humans before. Why would humans be any different?" "Because your species has something rare in the galaxy: genetic diversity. Most evolved species reach uniformity. Humans contain more variation than any spacefaring race the Coalition has encountered." For the first time in weeks, Carol felt a flicker of hope. "And this matters how?" "It may confuse their assimilation process." Vex's large eyes blinked slowly. "It's not much, but it's something, and I have more to share if you're willing to listen." Carol holstered her weapon. "I'll listen. Right now, Earth needs every advantage it can get." Outside the embassy window, fighter jets screamed overhead, heading toward another battle against the invaders. One small alien and one human stood together, an unlikely alliance in humanity's darkest hour. The first major battle for Earth's orbit began at dawn. Admiral Susan Grant stood in the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching as red dots representing Void Swarm ships closed in on the blue dots of Earth's defense fleet. "All ships, report ready, Admiral," Lieutenant Kelly Barnes said, her voice steady despite the tension filling the room. "Radiation weapons are armed and crews are wearing protective gear." Susan nodded grimly. The experimental weapons developed by Dr. Martinez's team had been rushed into production. Every soldier using them knew the risk: radiation poisoning that would kill them within weeks even with the best protective gear available. "Launch the attack," Susan ordered. "May God help us all." On screens covering the wall, Earth's remaining spaceships moved to intercept the Void Swarm. Fighter jets launched from aircraft carriers. Ground-based missiles streaked into the sky. The battle had begun. Dr. Olivia Martinez stared at the blood sample under her microscope. She had been working for 72 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination. The captured scout ship had provided crucial information about the Void Swarm's biology. "Look at this," she said to Paul Rodriguez, who was nearly asleep at his desk. "The swarm cells are trying to absorb the human DNA, but they're struggling." Paul rubbed his eyes and joined her at the microscope. "What does it mean?" Vex was right. "Our genetic diversity is confusing them." Olivia straightened, excitement in her tired eyes. "Their strength is adaptation through absorption, but human DNA is too varied. It's causing errors in their assimilation process." "Can we use this?" Paul asked. Olivia was already moving to her computer. "We can create a virus, something that uses human DNA as a carrier. If we can introduce it into their hive mind network, it could disrupt their entire collective, Paul finished. But how do we deliver it? Olivia's fingers paused on the keyboard. Someone would need to bring it to their mothership. The largest, void swarm vessel in orbit. They both knew what that meant. A suicide mission. I'll do it, Olivia said quietly. It's my research, my responsibility. Paul shook his head. The military won't allow it. You're too valuable. They'll send soldiers. Who? We'll die anyway, Olivia replied, returning to her work. At least this way it means something. Captain Dwayne Clark and his team had spent days studying the alien language patterns captured from the scout ship. The void swarm didn't communicate with words but with complex frequencies, like music but far more complicated. If we broadcast these sequences, Dwayne explained to his remaining team members, we might confuse their ships, make them think they're receiving orders from their commanders. Lieutenant Kathy Winters nodded. False orders to divide their fleet? Exactly. Dwayne pointed to the map showing void swarm positions around the world. We focus on these 3 major clusters. If we can split them up, our fighters have a better chance. The plan was dangerous. They would need to get close enough to broadcast the false signals, close enough to be detected and attacked. Everyone understand the risks? Dwayne asked. The soldiers nodded. No one spoke of survival. They were past that now. Let's move out. Ambassador Carol White and Vex approached the Coalition outpost hidden on one of Jupiter's moons. The small spacecraft Vex had provided barely fit the 2 of them, but it had gotten them past the void swarm blockade. They won't welcome me, Vex warned as they prepared to dock. And they may shoot you on sight. Carol checked the data drive in her pocket. They'll listen when they see what we've brought. Proof the swarm can be fought. The outpost's guns tracked them as they approached. Carol broadcast on all frequencies. This is Ambassador Carol White of Earth. I come with vital information about defeating the void swarm. For long moments, there was no response. Then a voice crackled through the radio. Dock at Bay 4, any sudden movements and we open fire. Vex guided their ship into the small docking bay. As the airlock cycled, Carol whispered, remember the plan. We need allies, not just an audience. When the door opened, they faced a dozen armed aliens, young members of various coalition species, who had been left to guard this outpost while their fleets retreated to the core worlds. A tall, 4-armed Arcturian stepped forward. I am Commander Zool. Why have you come? Carol stood straight. Because Earth has found a way to hurt the void swarm, and we need your help. Pilot Lisa Johnson flew her fighter jet through the burning skies above Chicago. Below her, the once great city was partly transformed by the alien invaders. Strange structures grew from the ruins of skyscrapers. Processing centers harvested Earth's resources. Eagle Squadron, form up, she ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos. Target the harvester at the city center. 6 jets moved into formation, behind her. They were the last air defense for the entire Midwest region. Their mission was to destroy the massive void swarm harvester before it could begin processing the city's population. Lisa's radar warned of approaching enemy fighters, small, fast craft shaped like dark teardrops. Incoming from the north, weapons hot. The sky erupted in explosions as the human jets clashed with alien fighters. Lisa's hands moved instinctively on the controls, her jet rolling and firing. 2 enemy craft exploded. A third slammed into one of her squadron members. Johnson were not going to make it through their defenses, her wingman called. There are too many. Lisa watched as another of her pilots went down in flames. An idea formed. Terrible but necessary. All remaining craft, give me your missiles, then retreat to base, she ordered. What are you doing, Captain? Clearing a path. Lisa's voice was steady. That's an order. One by one, her squadron members transferred missile control to her jet, then pulled away. Lisa now controlled the firepower of all remaining aircraft. She aimed her jet directly at the harvester and pushed the engines to maximum. The G-forces pressed her into her seat as enemy fire streaked past her wings. This is for Earth, Lisa whispered, launching every missile at once before ramming her fuel-laden jet into the harvester's core. The explosion lit up the Chicago skyline. The harvester collapsed, its alien technology dissolving without the control signal. Lisa Johnson was gone, but the city had gained precious time to evacuate thousands more people. In rural Montana, Bill Harmon led a group of farmers and townspeople armed with hunting rifles and homemade explosives. They called themselves Earth's Last Line. Ordinary citizens fighting back against ground forces while the military focused on bigger targets. "They're coming over the ridge," Bill told the 30 men and women hiding in the tree line. "Remember, aim for the joints in their armor." The aliens moved with inhuman grace, scanning for human heat signatures. They weren't expecting resistance here, so far from major cities. "Now!" Bill shouted. Rifle fire erupted from the trees. Explosives detonated under alien feet. The surprise attack worked. 7 invaders fell before they could respond. Similar scenes played out across the globe as humans proved they would fight for every inch of their world. The Void Swarm, accustomed to species that surrendered or fled, had never encountered such widespread resistance. They were learning that humans didn't just fight with their military. They fought with everything they had. Dr. Olivia Martinez stood before Admiral Susan Grant and the Joint Military Council. Her research notes spread across the table. Dark circles under her eyes showed her exhaustion, but her voice remained strong. "The virus is ready," she said. "It carries modified human DNA that will confuse and corrupt the Void Swarm's hive mind, but it must be delivered directly to their central neural cluster." Susan frowned. "You mean their mothership? The one in high orbit surrounded by hundreds of fighter craft?" "Yes. And it can't be sent by missile or drone. Their defenses would detect and destroy it." Olivia took a deep breath. "Someone has to carry it in." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what she was proposing. Colonel Joe Ramirez, a tall man with a weathered face and 20 years of Special Forces experience, stood up. "My team will take it." "Joe," Susan began. "With respect, Admiral, this is what we do." His voice was calm, certain. "Dr. Martinez has created the weapon. Now we deliver it." Olivia looked at the soldier gratefully. "The carrier needs to be injected with the virus beforehand. It will make you part of the weapon. The swarm will detect regular human DNA, but this modified version should slip past their sensors." "Will it hurt?" Joe asked plainly. Olivia hesitated. "Yes, very much." Joe nodded once. "When do we leave?" The infiltration team prepared in silence. Colonel Joe Ramirez and 5 soldiers from different Special Forces units checked their equipment one last time. The medical team had already injected them with the modified virus, and they could feel it changing them from within. A constant burning sensation under their skin. 30 minutes to launch, a voice announced over the intercom. In the corner of the room, Dr. Martinez made final adjustments to 6 small devices. "These will protect the virus until you reach the central chamber," she explained. "After that, the swarm's own network will spread it." The soldiers attached the devices to their tactical vests. No one spoke about the fact that this was a one-way mission. Joe checked his team. Sergeant Laura Reed, demolitions expert. Corporal Rick Foster, communications specialist. Private Sam Cook, tech expert. Lieutenant Ben Morris and Captain Ali Chen, both with advanced combat training. All volunteers. All already dying from the virus. "Admiral on deck," someone called. The team stood at attention as Susan Grant entered the room. She looked at each soldier in turn, memorizing their faces. "The Void Swarm thinks we're like all the other species they've consumed, that will break and run." Susan's voice was low but carried to every corner of the room. "You're about to prove them wrong. Humanity doesn't surrender, and we don't abandon our home." She saluted them. "Good hunting." The stolen Void Swarm transport ship moved silently through space, its systems broadcasting the correct identification codes thanks to Captain Dwayne Clark's earlier mission. Inside, Colonel Joe Ramirez and his team checked their weapons one last time. "We're approaching the mothership," Lieutenant Ben Morris said from the pilot's seat. "No sign they've detected us yet." Through the view screen, the Void Swarm mothership loomed enormously. Unlike the smaller craft, it wasn't sleek or predatory. It resembled a massive, misshapen tumor, bulging and irregular with pulsing light beneath its surface. "Remember the plan," Joe told his team. "We dock, we move to the central chamber, we deploy the virus. Any questions?" There were none. These soldiers had accepted their fate. The transport ship docked without incident. When the airlock opened, Joe was the first to step inside the mothership. The interior was warm and humid, with surfaces that seemed half mechanical, half organic. Lights pulsed along the walls like blood through veins. "This way," Sam Cook whispered, following the signal on his detector. The neural cluster should be 2 levels down. They moved silently through curving corridors, encountering few swarm drones. Those they did meet barely reacted to them, the virus in their blood masking their human signatures. "It's working," Laura Reed said softly. "They can't tell we're human." The deeper they went, the stranger the ship became. Walls pulsed with more intensity. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe, and then they found the processing chambers. Transparent pods lined a massive chamber, each containing what appeared to be different alien species in various stages of change. Some were clearly dead, their bodies partly dissected. Others still moved, their features slowly morphing into something resembling the Void Swarm. "They're studying them," Rick Foster whispered in horror. "Learning how to absorb their traits." Joe forced himself to look away. "Keep moving. We can't help them now." As they descended to the lower level, the burning sensation from the virus intensified. Allie Chen stumbled, blood trickling from her nose. "The virus is accelerating," she said, wiping the blood away. "We don't have much time." They reached a massive door that pulsed with energy. Sam attached a device to what appeared to be a control panel. After a moment, the door slid open. The central chamber was unlike anything they had imagined. A vast, spherical room filled with a web of glowing, living circuitry. At its center floated what looked like a brain the size of a small house. Not solid, but composed of shifting, flowing material that changed colors as they watched. "The neural cluster," Olivia's voice came through their earpieces. She was monitoring from Earth. "That's it, the core of their hive mind. Security systems finally recognized the threat. Alarms blared and the door behind them sealed shut. Swarm guards, larger versions of the drones they'd seen on Earth, began to pour from side passages. "Defensive positions," Joe ordered. The team formed a circle, weapons ready. The guards charged and the humans opened fire. Bullets tore through alien flesh, and the special ammunition containing trace amounts of the disrupting radiation caused the creatures to convulse before dying. Sam worked frantically to reach the neural cluster, while the others provided cover, fire. "I can't get close enough," he shouted. "The field around it repels anything with mass." Olivia's voice crackled through their comms. "The virus itself needs to make direct contact with the neural material. One of you has to—" Joe understood. He looked at his team, all fighting bravely against overwhelming odds. Ben had already fallen. Rick was badly wounded. "Cover me," Joe said, removing his equipment and weapons. "I'm going in." Laura nodded, understanding his plan. "It's been an honor, Colonel." Joe ran toward the brain-like structure, dodging enemy fire. The burning inside him had become unbearable, the virus reaching its final stage. As he approached the energy field surrounding the neural cluster, he felt his body begin to break down. With his last strength, Joe threw himself into the field. Pain beyond anything he had ever experienced tore through him as the field tried to repel him. But the virus in his blood was already changing him, making him compatible with the swarm's biology. He pushed through, his body dissolving as it made contact with the neural material. Joe Ramirez's last thought was of Earth, blue oceans, green forests, and 8 billion humans who might now have a chance to survive. Then he was gone, absorbed into the hive mind. But the virus went with him. Across Earth, people watched their screens as strange events unfolded in space. The Void Swarm ships, once moving with perfect coordination, began to drift aimlessly. Some fired on each other. Others simply shut down, floating dead in orbit. In The underground command center Admiral Susan Grant stared at the tactical display with disbelief and growing hope. "It's working," she whispered. "The virus is spreading through their network." Communication Officer Doug Peterson looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving signals from the infiltration team's ship." Susan rushed over. "Any survivors?" "Captain Allie Chen and Sergeant Laura Reed," Doug replied. "They're reporting that Colonel Ramirez successfully delivered the virus to the neural cluster. He merged with it." Susan closed her eyes briefly. "Get those women home. Then prepare all remaining forces for a final push. We hit them while they're confused." Around the world, military commanders received the order. Fighter jets launched. Ground. Troops advanced on alien positions. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity attacked with coordination and purpose while the enemy floundered. On the Void Swarm mothership, something unexpected was happening. Colonel Joe Ramirez had ceased to exist as a human, but his consciousness hadn't been completely destroyed. The virus-carrying modified human DNA had created a bridge between his mind and the swarm's collective intelligence. Deep in the neural cluster, Joe found himself still aware, still thinking. The Void Swarm's collective mind surrounded him, alien, vast and terrifying. But the virus was doing its work, creating chaos in the perfectly ordered hive. Joe couldn't control his body anymore. He had none. But he discovered he could push thoughts into the chaos, adding to the confusion. Images of Earth, memories of humanity's stubborn resistance, the concept of individual will versus collective control. The swarm had never encountered this kind of attack before. Physical weapons they understood. But this invasion of their shared consciousness by a single human mind, backed by the genetic diversity of an entire species, was something new. The mothership shuddered as control systems failed. Throughout the vessel, confused swarm drones attacked each other or simply shut down. In what remained of Joe's fading human consciousness, he felt satisfaction. He had become a virus himself, infecting the enemy from within. Captain Dwayne Clark led the assault on the Void Swarm transport ship. His team moved quickly through the corridors, encountering minimal resistance from the confused alien crew. "Life signs ahead," Lieutenant Kathy Winters reported, checking her scanner. "Not human. Lots of them." They broke through to a large chamber and stopped in shock. Dozens of transparent pods lined the walls, each containing an alien being. Unlike the processing chambers on the mothership, these aliens appeared to be in stasis, not being changed. "They're prisoners," Dwayne realized, "from other worlds." His team moved through the room, examining the pods. The aliens inside represented species they had never seen before, some humanoid, others completely foreign in form. Some of these might be from worlds the swarm consumed years ago, Kathy said. Species the Coalition thought were extinct. Dwayne made a quick decision. "We're taking them with us. Start the release process." As his team worked to free the captives, Dwayne couldn't help but wonder how the galaxy would change when they learned that humans had not only survived the Void Swarm, but had saved beings that the Coalition had abandoned to die. Ambassador Carol White stood on the bridge of the Arcturian ship as it entered Earth's orbit. Behind her vessel, 23 ships from various Coalition species followed. A small fleet, but a powerful symbol. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth Defense Command," the Arcturian communications officer announced. Admiral Grant's face appeared on the main screen. "Ambassador White," she said with surprise. "We weren't expecting you back so soon, and with company." Carol smiled, the first real smile in months. "Admiral, may I present Commander Zool of the Arcturian Guard and representatives from 7 other Coalition species. They've come to help." Susan's expression hardened. "A bit late, aren't they?" "We were wrong to abandon Earth," Commander Zool said, stepping forward. His forearms were held in the Arcturian gesture of apology. "The young races of the Coalition voted against the Council's decision. When Ambassador White showed us proof that humans had found a way to fight the swarm, we came immediately. We bring shield technology. added a small bird-like Procyon engineer, and weapons we have been too afraid to use until now. Susan studied them for a long moment. Your help is welcome, she finally said. But understand this. Earth will never again trust those who abandoned us. Any future alliance will be on new terms. Carol nodded in agreement. Earth had earned the right to set those terms. The final battle for Earth unfolded over 3 days. The Void Swarm, still disorganized from the virus attack, could not coordinate their defense. Human forces, bolstered by the returning coalition ships, pushed forward on all fronts. Admiral Susan Grant directed the space battle from the orbital command station. Below her, Earth still showed the scars of invasion, cities in ruins, vast areas transformed by alien technology. But the planet remained, and its people fought on. The mothership's defenses are down, reported Lieutenant Kelly Barnes. Shall we destroy it? Susan considered this. The virus had done its work, but the mothership still housed the central intelligence of the swarm. If it survived, it might eventually recover. No, she decided. We capture it. Dr. Martinez believes Colonel Ramirez may still exist in some form within their network, and we need to understand this enemy to make sure they never threaten anyone again. Special teams boarded the mothership, securing it section by section. In the central chamber, they found the neural cluster changed, no longer pulsing with alien colors but glowing with a steady blue light. When Dr. Olivia Martinez finally entered the chamber, she approached the cluster carefully. Her instruments detected something impossible, patterns in the neural activity that matched human brainwaves. Joe, she whispered, are you in there? The light pulsed once, twice, 3 times. A deliberate response. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. We'll find a way to communicate, she promised. We won't abandon you. 5 years later, Bill Harmon's Montana ranch hosted representatives from 27 alien species. His fields, once trampled by fighting, now grew tall with wheat. The barn had been expanded into a meeting hall where the new Galactic Defense Council gathered. Ambassador Carol White stood before the assembled delegates. Earth had changed in the years since the invasion. Humanity had rebuilt cities, incorporated, salvaged alien technology, and established themselves as leaders in the reformed galactic community. Today we honor those who stood their ground when retreat seemed the only option, Carol said. We remember that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about facing fear and still doing what must be done. A monument was unveiled, a simple granite column with names carved in many languages, the fallen of all species who had eventually joined the fight against the Void Swarm. At the top, Colonel Joe Ramirez's name stood alone. The man who still existed in the captured neural cluster had become a bridge between species, his consciousness slowly teaching them to understand the IC Swarm's technology while retaining his humanity. As the delegates filed past the monument, a young Arcturian approached Carol. My teachers say that before the invasion, humans were considered primitive by coalition standards, the alien said. Is that true? Carol smiled. Technology doesn't define advancement. Courage does. Sacrifice does. Standing by your allies does. Me. Arcturian nodded thoughtfully. That is why all our military academies now study Earth tactics and philosophy. Carol looked out over the gathering. Once mighty species now learning from humans, the allies who had fled now returned with respect. Rather than condescension, Earth had suffered greatly, losing nearly a third of its population. But humanity had proven something to the galaxy and to themselves. When every species fled the invasion, only humanity stayed to fight. And in doing so, they had saved not just themselves, but perhaps the soul of galactic civilization itself.